wonder how well the post-apocalyptic UK is getting on. Zombies have been roaming for nearly 3 decades now, and who knows what colourful characters have sprung up since the collapse of civilization. Well, it's time to find out. Join us as we discuss the long-awaited 28 Years Later. Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tim.
Aye.
This is a horror movie podcast. We are here today to talk about 28 Years Later. The third film in the... Well, actually, it's the fourth film in the 28 Days franchise. Just to make that joke that everyone's making on the internet. Tim looks confused,
though.
Okay,
because the first one's 28 Days.
Well, there's a Sandra Bullock movie from the 90s called 28 Days, so everyone's joking that that's the original, and it's weird that she never came back for the sequels, but yes.
I get
it. But anyway, we're talking about the new film. We did 28 Weeks Later a couple of weeks ago. We did 28 Days Later over 28 months ago. It was years ago at this point. But we will start spoiler-free, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we go into the spoilers, and of course, if you're enjoying the show on YouTube, please do hit the like button. It helps out a bunch if you do. But we'll get into the we'll get into the movie, and we came in with, I think, with very differing, enthusiasm levels, expectation levels. You were feeling quite good about it. I was feeling kind of lukewarm, mainly just because I'm kind of lukewarm in the franchise in general. But it reviewed very well. The Rotten Tomatoes numbers, like in the 90s or something silly like that. It's reviewing absurdly well. So I was like, okay, if nothing else, I expect there's going to be like a strong statement of a film. Maybe not something I like, but at the very least, that it's not going to be bland based on these reviews. So,
sure.
I'll just get to the question. There's no need for preamble. Tim, what did you think of 28 Years Later?
So like you said, I was pretty hyped for it. Just the announcement of it wasn't enough to get me super excited, but I thought the trailer was pretty well done. So that was like the big thing for me going into the movie. And I gotta say, I wasn't disappointed. I actually really like this movie a lot. If anything, maybe I'm a little surprised, because I thought the trailer looked good, and so I thought, okay, hopefully, it's not going to be like crap, but I actually came out being fairly impressed. I guess first thing like to say about it is I think it just looks absolutely beautiful. Does the whole movie take place in Scotland? Because I think the opening scene or whatever, it says the Scottish Highlands, but then I don't know if we got any other location.
No, I think that's only it's only the opening that takes place in the Scottish Highlands, because I got the vibe that the rest wasn't anyway, but there's one point where they see a statue with the wings out. That is in England. That's not a Scottish thing. So. Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say finally a reason to visit Scotland.
Har 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 har.
But no, I thought the film was absolutely gorgeous. There's just some really I'd say lots of really beautiful scenery scenes, and it's very much the opposite of the first movie, which was again, looking back on it now, it looks so horrible because of how it was shot and stuff. But at the time, one of the things that was impressive about it was seeing all these empty city landscapes, and it's kind of the opposite here, where you have these really lush woodland kind of settings, and these lots of fields and forests and stuff. But it it looks fabulous. And then I think Danny Boyle adds a lot of little flourishes and touches that I just think are really cool, to the point where I started to kind of reconsider him as a director, because I haven't seen everything he's done, but I've seen the majority of it, and I don't think he's bad, but he's not someone I really think about a lot. And as I'm watching, it's I'm really liking this style. Maybe as someone I should hold in a bit higher regard, and maybe it's just the last couple of things he put out. I just didn't really interest me. I don't really care about that Beatles movie or whatever. But yeah, especially during the beginning, there's I like when he's kind of like mixing in like old war footage or whatever, like those old medieval kind of movies and stuff that like he puts in, and then the stuff he has, like, you know, it's kind of video gamey, but like, you know, when they kill like a zombie or an infected person, like there's this kind of, you know, like kind of like freeze frame like shots that I actually like thought like were pretty cool. And yeah, I mean, I thought it had like a pretty compelling story. I was interested in the characters. It goes in some places I wasn't really expecting. I think there's some, you know, meaty themes that, you know, I guess we'll get into in spoilers and stuff, but I think there's like a lot of weight to the movie. And I think the, you know, infected stuff is really cool in this. I think there's like some new wrinkles that they add, and it all looks great. And yeah, I was just fairly impressed for the whole thing. And then, yeah, maybe like the most surprising like last 2 minutes or so of a film that I've seen in like a really long time. Like I was legitimately shocked, like just like, oh wow, this is a very unexpected thing that they're doing here. But yeah, we'll save all that for spoilers. But you know, there'll be a lot to discuss. But yeah, that's where I'm coming from. I was pretty happy with it.
Well, yeah, the ending goes places. I think that's fair to say. And it is also well worth pointing out that this is very much part one of a larger story, right? And I knew they were doing the next one, and that they were planning a third. They were or technically a fourth, but you know what I mean, like, or actually a fifth at this point because of 28 weeks. You know, I knew they were planning like a set of 3 films, and I wasn't sure what to expect from that, but I don't think, for whatever reason, I ever assumed that this would end with what feels like, oh, that's like a to be continued. I did not expect that, but that's how this movie ends. At least with the final scene. You could argue that it kind of wraps up its story and then has like a little scene at the end, but you could almost put that last scene as a mid-credit sequence, I suppose, if you really wanted to.
I think, yeah, I mean, I don't mind what they did, but it does feel like, yeah, that would have been more of a mid credits or like after credits kind of scene. But I don't know. I kind of like the ballsiness of like just putting it right out there, be like, nope, like here it is.
Oh, there'll be many things to say about that scene, but obviously it's heavy spoiler territory. Yeah, I mean, it's good you're so enthusiastic because I'm not going to be. So someone needs to be enthusiastic. So I think the opening like third of the movie is fairly solid. I like some of the stylistic choices that are made. They're kind of weird in places, but I don't mind that. It feels kind of confident. It feels like, oh, we're trying something different with these like freeze frame, almost like kind of like low budget bullet time style moments when the zombies get hit with an arrow, because there's not a lot of bullets in this. You know, keep in mind this is 28 years since the fall of the island, so everything's kind of reverted a little bit in terms of technology. But yeah, honestly, the plot and where it goes after that opening third, there was just some like decisions where I felt like it took away from any of the tension for me, and I kind of felt like, okay, I see why we're doing this and why we're going down this path, but in some ways it feels like it's repeating some of the sins of 28 weeks later in a bizarre way.
Oh, interesting.
And then I also kind of felt like by the time I got to the last chunk of the movie, I like all tension and feeling like it was a horror movie, it kind of went away in a lot of respects. So I do have a lot of mixed feelings. Like I do appreciate the ballsiness. It does feel like a movie that the people making it, like, you know, they had an idea, they wanted to say certain things, and they wanted to be a bit weird. But there's definitely some points by the end where I'm like, some of this might be a little weird just for weird's sake at this point, if I'm honest. And I don't know if it's clicking with me quite as much.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's got kind of a weird structure, which we'll get into as well.
Yeah, like you can definitely break the movie down into like, yeah, I guess like probably like thirds. Yeah, you know, kind of hard like to talk about it, you know, without spoilers, but there's kind of like, yeah, that first chunk with like these 2 characters, and then I guess kind of like this second chunk that's like a journey, and then kind of the ending, which yeah, I think, like you said, it's been getting good reviews, so I think most of the people I know have been fairly positive, but I have seen like a few people that have been kind of criticizing, I think similar to what you're saying, like some of the places it goes, and again, we'll get into it in spoilers. Like I think some people don't like some of the decisions like that the main character makes or how the story switches. But I don't know. For me, I think I just got like so sucked up into the world that there's stuff I could say like, yeah, that's maybe not a little plausible, or yeah, it's kind of silly that maybe the character would do this or whatever. But I didn't really care. It's just one of those things where I just really felt like immersed like in the world. So I was enjoying it like pretty whole cloth. I was curious what you're going to think about it, because I feel like the two big problems that you have with like 28 Days Later were kind of like fixed in this. Like, obviously, I think this looks so much better. Like, I think it's a beautiful looking movie. So, like, yeah, that was like the big problem that we had when we were, looking back at like 28 Days Later. And then you always say how you don't really like the shift from the final third of the movie where it gets like, all like into all like the military stuff. And then I guess without giving like too much spoilers, I think, there are like some twists and turns in this, but I do think it does, remain a bit more of like a character like focus thing, in the last, third or so of this. So I wasn't sure if you'd be, enjoying that a bit more or not.
It's interesting comparing it, honestly, because it's so different tonally to 28 Days Later that it almost doesn't even feel like it's the same franchise. Like, obviously, it uses the setup of this happened in the UK. The UK has been cut off from the rest of the world. Like, all that stuff is there, but tonally, and the way that the music feels, the way that it focuses on the characters, like, there's nothing like the protagonist in this film compared to the first one, right? The first film doesn't have anyone like this, or does the more emotional side of the story in quite the way that this one goes for. Interestingly, on the subject that you've brought up a couple times, though, which is like how the original film looks. Now, obviously, this will be something people argue with us about, because some people are going to defend the decision to the death of shooting that movie on standard definition digital cameras in 2001. But I will say it once again, I think that movie looks like shit on modern displays, and it has looked like shit for 20 years at this point. As soon as we switched to HD, that movie started looking very bad compared to everything else. And I criticize that because I think you can have a lower grungy feeling movie but still look very nice aesthetically. Look at look at the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, shot in like 16mm film, so it's much lower quality than most movies, but still holds up much better because film's still film. So I've critiqued that heavily. I thought it was very ugly the last time I watched it and unappealing to look at. What's interesting about this one is they shot it with iPhones, and they use lots of fancy lenses and stuff, so they're getting a lot of things out of it that most people can't just go and do on their iPhone, right? And I remember saying in the 28 Weeks Later review, I was like, well, that's a bit gimmicky, and what's the point of even doing it that way if you're going to like use a bunch of fancy lenses anyway? And will you even be able to tell that it's shot on an iPhone? And the funny thing is, because I was paying attention to it, because I was very curious about how this movie was going to look visually, is that there are times when this movie is very pretty, and it pulls off these really nice shots, and it's definitely going for more of a big cinematic feel than the original film does. But I'm going to be honest, there are times when I can tell it's shot on an iPhone, and particularly scenes that are in the dark have this kind of fuzziness to them. There's a scene where the main character, who's a kid, who's talking to like an older guy in like the main sort of village they live in, about maybe, I don't know, a third of the movie, give or take. And the entire scene has what I can only describe as like a fuzzy grid that feels like it's over the top of the entire image. And it's something that I've seen before. It's something that you see in phone footage when like people are filming stuff outside and the quality's a little bit, it's not really able to handle the low light conditions. And you see it in this movie as well. So for all the expensive lenses and stuff they're using to accent and do all these fancy shots they want to do, that core limitation of what an iPhone camera can do is still there in some shots. It's not consistent. It's not every shot in the movie by any means, but I was noticing it creep in here or there. And obviously it looks much, much better than the original film, right? There's no question. I'm not trying to say otherwise. But every so often I'd notice one of these fuzzy shots and I'd go, why couldn't you just use the camera? Why did you have to do it on it? What is this adding to the movie? I don't know. It feels weird to me to even do that. Like, that decision just feels like such a auteur who's up his own ass being like, oh, we're going to do it all on an iPhone because we're edgy artists or something. I don't know. It still rubs me the wrong way that they even felt the need to do it that way.
I mean, yeah, I can't defend the decision or anything, but I did notice like some fuzzy scenes like that as well, but like I can't specifically like remember like exact scenes. So maybe it wasn't all the time, but like there were some times to me that it felt like intentional. Like,
yeah,
like maybe if it was something where is a bit more of like a dangerous scene or something, like they might switch it up to be like a bit more grimy or unfocused or something. But I mean, it's kind of hard to like tell without specifically going back and like checking for which scenes it was.
I mean, yeah. I mean, if they tell me that this was not something that happened naturally and they were adding it for certain scenes because they thought it was the creative choice to make, then fair enough. It's not a limitation of the way they shot it. But then I would question why did you do it? Because I don't think it looks very good. It looks like a defect almost. Like so.
Yeah.
My point stands either way, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Like, I could understand if, like, they do something like that, maybe if it's a scene when they're, like, in the forest and, like an infected is, like, sneaking up on them or something, and maybe they want, like, more of, like, a, like, less glamorous feel or something like that. But, like, the scene you're describing where they're just, like, out at night talking, like, I do agree. Like, that's something that you don't really want that kind of look for. So that would be, like, a weird decision if that was on purpose. But,
yeah, because you tend to see it. I was noticing it mostly on faces. That's where I could see this kind of fuzziness appearing, was on their faces, and I was like, this is just kind of distracting me. And maybe it won't be as bad when you're watching it on a TV and not like a 50-foot cinema screen or whatever the size they are. Like maybe that's making it worse, but I was noticing it, and it was kind of this weirdly intermittent thing where I kept thinking, why have this problem? Other movies don't have this problem, and it's not adding to it for me. It's not making it feel like I don't know, because like I think the argument back in the day when they did 28 Days Later is they want it to feel like a documentary, and cheap documentaries are shot on like super cheap cameras, and they have this kind of grungy feel to them, and there's all these things. But I'm not so sure why this movie needs to feel like it might have some qualities of being shot on a phone. Well, except for one scene at the very end, which I'll talk about when we get there. But I get that I'm being the negative Nancy on this one, and I just don't feel that passionate about it. And I know other people love it. Some of our own patrons have already said they love it. So I'm the villain here.
I mean, I throw myself in that camp. Like I really dug it, and I'm not saying that there isn't like imperfections in it. And again, on a rewatch, maybe like you're saying, some of that quality, like picture quality or something, maybe that'll stand out more. But again, I was very happy with my experience, and I do look forward to rewatching it too. I already pre-ordered the Steelbook, which is very frustrating now, because I'm not getting as much physical media, but when I really like something, I like to get it. But I'll kind of do it now if it's like a good collector's edition or like Steelbooks I've gotten into. But you like literally have to pre-order it like the day the movie comes out. Otherwise, like they sell out so fast. Yeah, like I had ordered the Nosferatu Steelbook like a couple of months before it came out or whatever, and my order got canceled because it was like, oh no, like you idiot, you should have pre-ordered it when the movie came out. Like, oh sorry, I didn't know you had to do it that far in advance.
It's because physical media is such a niche thing now that they don't make big like print orders. You have to order it right away so they know how many to make, pretty much, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, and it's super expensive now because it's like people complain about like the cost of Switch 2 games, but like I don't know, Blu-rays now, or like, unless you're getting like very bare bones stuff, like, you can pay like, they might be like $40-$50 or whatever, like, if you're getting like 4K or, some type of special edition thing. But whatever, that's the world we're living in. Unfortunately, the world did not stop for us in 2002, and can't just all live in these nice quiet little villages or whatever.
Oh, you're making a comparison to the movie. I was like, wait, why did you want the world to stop right after 9/11? That's weird. That's a weird time to want to be frozen in place.
I guess like technically the world didn't stop for them, but I mean pretty much any like pop culture or big events like they pretty much missed out on.
Here's the weird thing about this is that one of the things that I said about 28 Weeks Later that was very frustrating is that the interesting part of that movie for me was this idea of trying to repopulate the UK after the post-apocalypse had died down, and the idea that the rest of the world was still kind of functioning as normal. I think in this movie, the idea that the rest of the world has still advanced and moved on and is still just living as normal, despite the fact that the UK has been just this quarantined zombie land for 28 years, is by far the most interesting thing about the movie to me. And when they touch upon it, I start getting really interested, and it's just such a shame that it gets pulled away and it's just not what the movie wants to focus on. And I'm like, come on, this is actually really interesting stuff. Also, is it just me or did this movie just ignore that 28 Weeks Later happened?
Well, here's like the big thing. So I think there's like a little reference to it, but then there's also kind of like a big thing that makes me feel like we're just completely ignoring it, which I guess it's like the start of the movie, so it's not, don't really have to worry about spoilers, but 28 weeks later,
if anything,
spoilers.
It's more spoilers for that. I was going to say it's spoilers for that movie, not this one.
So so skip ahead if you don't want that spoiled for some reason, but the movie kind of sucks. You don't really have to watch it. But that basically ends with the news that the virus has spread to like France or whatever. It's like mainland Europe, and then I think they have some text or something in the beginning that says, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it said like the virus started to spread out there, but they were able to contain it and then just quarantine the UK. You're
adding so many more like details than they actually tell you. All they say is mainland Europe was able to fight back against the infection. That's it. It's like one sentence, which it doesn't, because it doesn't even make it sound like, it even got to the mainland Europe. It just sounds like, they stopped it from getting there. But if you want to try and make it fit with the end of the last movie, you have to say, well, somehow they stopped it from spreading, even though we had infected around the Eiffel Tower. Which, given how quickly and badly it spread in the UK, seems really unlikely and inconsistent with how quick it spreads. But I don't think they had any interest in continuing anything from that movie. Because even the other thing about 28 Weeks Later is they flat out said they've all died out because there's nothing left for the infected to eat. And there's so many infected just around in this movie, which makes no sense given the logic that the last movie told us about.
Yeah, so that's the other thing that I feel like, is just completely ignoring it, because you're right. That movie, one of the points of that movie is that, once the quarantine is in place, all the zombies just starve. And then this movie is like, no, they don't. In fact, they are quite, they're doing quite well.
And if anything, some of them are kind of fat because they've been eating too good for however long. So, it doesn't really add up with anything in that last movie. And because neither Danny Boyle or Alex Garland had much to do with that last movie, it just kind of feels like, we're just going to like not canonize that. Yeah. That's just out of the canon now. Just ignore that one.
Which, I mean, I don't really care because, I didn't really care for that movie. I'll say.
All right, your brain. Tim's brain is. I can hear the cogs turning. He's thinking about something, and he's trying to like land on what he's going to say.
I was just gonna say, I don't think this is like spoilery to say, but like so the first one, 28 Days Later, like that was I know they're technically not zombies, but whatever. But like that was kind of like the first instance of like getting introduced to fast zombies, right? Like there wasn't another movie that had done that before.
As far as I can remember, yes. But I mean, someone's probably going to say, there's some weird, French movie from 1978 that had fast zombies. But like, as far as I know, that's the movie that kind of brought fast zombies to the mainstream. Yeah.
Yeah, because I just thought it was funny that like I was like, okay, so like the first one introduces like the concept of fast zombies, and like this one kind of introduces the concept of like jacked zombies. Like,
We got jack zombies, we got fat zombies, we got a whole variety that have developed over time.
I do kind of feel like I don't know if they were intentionally like inspired by Romero, but it does seem like they're kind of trying to do a bit of a Romero thing that he did like with his later zombie movies, where they seem very focused on like kind of looking at how the society of the infected works. And I love Romero, but I do think that was one thing that like I always didn't really click with in like some of his later movies like Land of the Dead and stuff. But I actually think they do a pretty good job here. Maybe it's because they're not like solely focused on it. But you get some like insight into some of the quirks and stuff that they do that I actually thought was pretty interesting, and should be some fun stuff to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, the movie's got ideas. I'll never fault it for having ideas. Not all the ideas necessarily speak to me or work for me. And like, if nothing else, I do appreciate that this feels like a film made by a filmmaker. It feels like there's ideas here that Boyle and Garland had that they wanted to explore. It doesn't feel like something they dumbed down because they wanted to give people the movie just that they expected or anything like that. And I wouldn't suggest that they should have just done that by any means.
I forget if we talked about it before, but do you even like Danny Boyle at all? Like, I mean, obviously this is kind of like the only horror stuff he really does, but I don't know, do you have any interest in his other movies? Or
honestly, the only Danny Boyle movie that I kind of like is Sunshine. And even that's got some wonky third act problems. Sure. But like, I don't really like Slumdog Millionaire. I don't really like Trainspotting. I maybe I just don't like Danny Boyle's the problem. Maybe I just don't like how he handles things. I never saw Yesterday, which was the Beatles movie he did a few years ago.
Yeah, there's a few ones like that I just really have no interest in. Even though I mean I feel like some people are like, oh no, it's actually like kind of good, but maybe if I'm bored, like someday I'll watch it. But again, he's not someone I think about a lot, but then when I actually do start looking at his filmography, I'm like, I actually do kind of like this movie and that movie. Like, I like Trainspotting fairly well, and I think the sequel is pretty good. And like, Slumdog Millionaire is good. Like, there's a lot of movies like that where I remember liking it when I watched it. I probably don't, have much of a desire to rewatch it, but
yeah, the big one we've not mentioned probably is 127 Hours, which was okay.
Oh, right, yeah.
And I've had no desire to ever rewatch it though. So I guess I just feel kind of lukewarm in his output in general. He just doesn't click with me for whatever reason.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, other than I guess his more genre-y kind of stuff. I would say I like a lot of the movies, but don't have strong desires to rewatch them. But I mean, this one again though, I think this will be one that'll be on rotation for me. Maybe one last thing I'll just bring up before maybe we get into spoiler territory. Is like you were mentioning like the idea of like how the world's moved on and how the that I agree that's an interesting idea, but I mean, who knows, maybe that'll be something they do in the sequels though, so that could potentially be something to look forward to. The only thing that's kind of interesting is like I really like this movie, so I feel like I'd be gung-ho about a sequel, but it's like different person directing it, and then I don't know if like Boyle and Garland, if they had any input on like the actual story idea or anything, so it is kind of interesting.
I think they must have input in the story, given the fact that this ends on like a lead-in where it feels like part one of a saga for the main character. I feel like the story's probably still them and heavily involved, and it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up being the one that directs the third one. It's actually kind of weird that they got this second one ready so quick.
Yeah, maybe, I think it's like coming out in January or something.
Yeah, I wonder if it's because maybe there's more of a time jump between the second and third, and they were worried about the kid, because the main character's a kid, and I'm wondering if it was like, oh, we don't want him aging too much when he's supposed to still be the same age in the second movie. So maybe that's why they rushed to get the second one done as quickly as they possibly could. Okay,
yeah, that would make sense. But yeah, it's interesting because I'm certainly intrigued by what the sequel will be like, but um, again, I'm not like an instant sell on it just because like okay, it is someone that was directing this, and a lot of this movie, I just liked the direction and stuff. So yeah, we'll see where that goes, but I've said my piece. I'm ready for spoilers.
I would just maybe add in a little chat about the music before we get into
Oh, sure.
the spoilers, just because they didn't reuse the main theme that everyone remembers from 28 Days Later. You can hear like a little slick flavor of it once or twice, but it's not like used fully. But there is like a whole new score composed, which I've seen people praising quite a bit, and there are some kind of interesting tracks in there that are oddly upbeat for like what the movie is. There's definitely good pieces of music. I don't know how much I like them as part of a zombie movie, but they're interesting music in their own right, for sure. So, but it's something that I've also seen people talk about. So it seems worth it to at least mention it before we get into things.
For me, it's been a bit longer because I saw this on Friday, so it's been about like 4 or 5 days for me at this point. So yeah, the music's not sticking in my head that much, but I don't remember having a problem with it when I watched it or anything.
Sure. All right, well, we can get into spoilers then, so we can start talking about everything in the movie without holding back. So spoilers for 28 Years Later. From this point on, you have been warned. Now, Tim, I need to ask a question.
Okay.
Do you know who Jimmy Savile is?
So when I watched the movie, I had absolutely no idea. But I still don't really know much about him, but I kind of slowly learned that he was a thing just from like seeing like British people basically like having to teach Americans like on social media and stuff like about who he is.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, yeah, if you want to give me a proper introduction to, I'm assuming a close friend of yours, someone you look up to.
Piss off. So here's the thing, right? I didn't even have this thought in my head when I was watching the movie. And when it gets to the final scene, which, because the opening of the movie does like a sort of very 28 Weeks Later style thing where it's like a little standalone segment where it's clearly, right as the outbreak's happening and it's in the Highlands, there's zombies coming to this farmhouse or this little cottage, and there's a bunch of kids watching the Teletubbies, which is a good way of like making people think of that time period, because Teletubbies were the big thing for young kids around 2001, 2002. So basically,
specifically, that's like a UK show too, right?
Yeah, it did make its way over to the US though, right? I feel like I've heard Americans talk about Teletubbies.
Oh yeah, like it made its way over to us, but yeah, like it seems like maybe, I don't know, maybe I was just a little old for it at the time, but it seemed like it might have been slightly bigger, in
yeah. Oh, I mean, I was too old for it as well. I mean, I was already, like 10, 11 or whatever age I was. Like, I mean, Teletubbies is for toddlers. It's, it's for 3 and 4 year olds. So, but it puts you in that time and place, and I appreciated how dark this opening scene was, where the zombies get into the room where all the kids have been put in front of a TV watching Teletubbies, and you don't see it obviously, you just see like blood spattering on the wall, but it's like, oh, the zombies are killing these children. Excellent. That's my thought anyway. So, but one of the kids, the main kid, like runs around and gets away from them and runs to the church where his dad's actually the priest there, and the dad's went kind of crazy and thinks this is the day of judgment, and this is a good thing that they're all going to die, and like, have no fear, my son. But the kid ends up like hiding in the in the, not a basement, but there's like a sort of like trapdoor area in the church for where they keep the children usually, I assume. So so this priest like has a whole thing where he's like getting eaten by all the rage zombies, and he's just sort of like, yes, consume me, the power of Christ compels you, or something, whatever he's saying.
Yeah.
So that's going on, right? And this is the opening scene, and then it cuts to 28 years later, and we get introduced to our main characters, none of whom are this kid, because there's no Scottish characters once we go to the main part of the movie. So you're like, okay, when's he going to come back? And I'd forgotten about it, because obviously you go the whole movie and it never comes up. This kid never appears in adult form until the very end, because I knew going into this that Jack O'Connell was in this movie. I saw his name in one of the cast lists, and I'd forgotten about that too.
And I don't think I'm that familiar with him. What else has he been in?
Are you joking right now?
Oh no, I don't. Wait, is it something we did? I don't know. It's not familiar to me.
He was in something very recently, Tim.
I don't know. What was it?
He's the main bad guy in Sinners.
Oh, okay.
Which was like a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months. Oops.
Okay. That didn't dawn on me. Maybe if he is wearing like, a tracksuit or something in that movie, that would have been more recognizable.
Yeah, I don't really remember if the dad called him Jimmy in the opening scene. Maybe he did, but obviously the name Jimmy on its own wouldn't have made me think twice. It's like, okay, so the kid's named Jimmy, no big deal. Who cares, right? But the final of this movie, and we'll talk about the rest of it, obviously, but we're just going straight to the ending here because this is the crazy part of the movie, right? So the story's finished, and the story ends with young Spike, our main character, who's like wanting to travel to the mainland himself and find himself and go on his journey of like growing up, coming of age, all that bollocks. And he gets chased by some zombies and gets into a dead end. It might look a bit rough for him, like, well, maybe he won't make it. And out of nowhere, Jack O'Connell shows up in a full bright-coloured tracksuit with long hair, with gold chains on, including the cross that his dad gave him, but it's upside down, and he's got gold rings in like every finger. And like all of a sudden, the tone of the movie completely changes as he's like smiling at this kid cheesy, and he's like, "Hey, we could be friends, or we should be friends. Like, how about we take over?" And he's got like a gang of people who are all wearing tracksuits, all brightly colored tracksuits. They all have long hair, and all of a sudden, for some reason, it starts being filmed like how parkour people film their TikToks, where it's all these weird like kicks and spins, and they're fighting the zombies. It's the most out of nowhere insane ending, and I didn't even think of Jimmy Savile when I was watching this. I was just gobsmacked at the tracksuits. I was like, why is there a group of people all wearing tracksuits?
And so, and I noticed in the credits, I'm assuming it's the other people that it's like in his gang or whatever, but they all seem to be named Jimmy. Yeah. So like, I'm guessing it's just like a thing.
Yeah, apparently they're called Jimmy Inc., Jimmy Shite, Jimmy Fox, Jimmy Jones, Jimmy Snake. The woman is called Jamina.
So like, I don't know, it cannot be like understated enough, like just how much of a tonal shift this is from like the entire movie, because the movie just ends on like, I don't know if it's necessarily like a downer ending. Like I guess there's like a little bit like that's kind of uplifting about it, but the final third of the movie, it's kind of like this somber reflection on,
and it's very serious. It's not. There's nothing silly about this movie in tone for the vast majority. It's like it's a very serious, emotional affair, and then you get to this final 2 minutes, and all of a sudden, it's like we've dipped into like a Saturday Night Live like skit or something like that. It's whiplash, Tim. You get whiplash from this.
It's so over the top, and the characters are like flipping and doing martial arts moves, and like even if you wanted them to like be like good zombie hunters, like that'd be fine if they're like using arrows or something, but it's just so crazy seeing them like do all these moves and stuff. And I mean, I gotta give them credit, like it's as soon as the movie was over, I saw this with my friend, and we just like immediately like could not stop talking about it. And like the big question we were asking ourselves was like, do we like this? like not the movie itself, but like this last 2 minutes or whatever. And I think ultimately I came to the conclusion, I think it kind of rocks. Like it's such like it's so like just crazy and weird and out there that I'm into it. So I don't know. Kudos for them for doing something pretty like ballsy and memorable. And I'm very curious to see like what the larger picture of this Jimmy society is. I'm guessing the idea, like I've seen some people kind of like talk about it when they're talking about who this person is, but I guess kind of the idea behind it is like they're idolizing this person who in real life, I guess we don't have to go into it, but was a piece of shit. And
I want to avoid certain words just for YouTube's advertising automated thing, but let's just say he did a lot of bad things to children. However, no one, like, or it wasn't, I won't say no one knew, because I think it's pretty clear that some people knew, but like it wasn't a public thing that was exposed until after he died. So, but the notable thing about that, though, is not only just was he getting away with something really terrible for years, his role in the industry. Now, I didn't really watch any of his stuff growing up. I actually barely knew who he was until all the bad stuff came out. So I can't even relate to the idea of watching him and stuff. But he was on a lot of stuff that involved kids. He was like, the comparison I've heard, it'd be kind of like how, and I don't really know this person that well, but the comparison I've heard is that it's if Mr. Rogers in the US turned out to be a predator, that's the equivalent to what Jimmy Savile is. But he was already dead, so he can't even pay for his crimes. So it's like one of the most horrific kind of realizations about a celebrity in the history of the entire, like, you know, UK. It's rough stuff.
So I guess, I mean, we'll find out more, I'm sure, in like the sequels or whatever, but is the idea they're kind of putting forward here is that like you have these people that are idolizing this guy who turned out to be a monster, but since basically like pop culture stopped around 2002 with the Infected, they never learned of, you know, his crimes or whatever. That's kind of the idea.
I think that's the idea, and I don't necessarily hate the idea of like, people who grew up from that time period, and because of all media stopping for them, they are fixated on something that was from that time. That makes sense to me. And I can also see thematically some really interesting ideas of like them effectively worshipping a monster, but they don't know he's a monster. But there's kind of some like interesting parallels for us, the audience, to read into. I think there's potentially some interesting stuff to do with that in the next movie. How this was filmed, though, and the tonal shift, and the way Jack O'Connell's smiling at the camera and like doing the cheesy grin and all that, I don't think I liked that, Tim. I think that the total whiplash of this was a bit much for me. And I like, yeah, you're right, it's memorable. I'm never going to forget the feeling of what the hell is happening here when all this started kicking off. But good, I find that hard to, like, it almost feels like they, like, oh, we're going to play a joke in the audience. They're never going to see this coming. And you're right, no one was going to see this coming because it's so absurdly out of left field that no one could see it coming. I think there's even like a thing where like the main dad in the movie, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, his character's named Jamie, which is very close to Jimmy. And correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Cillian Murphy's character named Jim in the original movie?
Oh, that does sound right. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're clearly doing something here with with the evolution of Jimmy's.
Jim's. Now I could have. I don't think Cillian Murphy wasn't in this movie at all, right? Because I could have sworn that they said that his character was going to appear in like some way or something in it. And
they've since said that he will be in a sequel, and I did notice that he was listed as an executive producer on this, so he's making money from this even though he's not in it. So good for him.
Yeah, because I could have sworn they said, and maybe they backtracked or something, that he was gonna appear in some form. So like I wasn't sure if there was like some little background thing or reference that I missed or whatever. That's interesting though. I didn't put together like all the coincidences of the names.
I don't know what to make of it, but I noticed it. So that's something. And our main character's name's Spike, which, you know, I can't help but think of the certain hit television show, the Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Sure.
That's the other movie or show I can think of with a Spike in it. But
that's funny. I mean, obviously, I love Buffy, but the thing I kept thinking of was Cowboy Bebop. His character's name is Spike in that.
Never heard of it.
So, it's an anime, so don't think it'd be up your alley.
No, anime? Nah, sounds a bit weird to me. I don't think I'd like it.
No. Be careful though. If you're too against it, I'm sure the patrons will find a way to get you to watch them.
Hey, look, money talks. Money does absolutely talk, but it'll cost them a high price. Not enough cash, stranger, as an old friend once said. The ending's wild, and obviously it's setting stuff up for the next movie. I am somewhat surprised that it did completely do the whole Because not only does the ending have this whole tease of this Jimmy Savile cult, which is its own thing, but it does kind of feel like where it leaves off Spike, and the fact that, because, Spike and his father's relationship's a big part of the first, third of the movie, but there's a point after the first act where Spike goes on his own adventure, and we basically just never see the dad again, except for a little bit at the end when he's, just hearing about what's happened to Spike. And he's still there, though, which only makes me think that, we're going to, they're going to reunite at some point. Probably not even in the next one. I suspect they might reunite in the third one when they come back and, complete the trilogy, I would assume. But I think that's why you cast someone like Aaron Taylor-Johnson in that role, is because they know they're going to go back to him later. So that'd be my assumption anyway.
Yeah, honestly, I was pretty surprised because I didn't expect the kid to basically be the main character throughout the movie. I kind of assumed it might be like a two-hander with him and the dad, and even when he goes off alone with the mom, I assumed, okay, well, part of this is going to be the dad's going to be going and looking for him, and we'll meet up with him or something at some point. So, but no, it's just Spike just pretty much becomes the main character, and it's always dicey sometimes with child actors, but I mean, they found a good one. I thought the kid was pretty good in it.
Oh yeah, for any of the things I don't feel very hot on, I will say I do think the kid's a good actor. I think he's very natural. I think for someone who's been asked to carry a whole movie by himself at that age, I think he does a pretty good job. Obviously, he was well directed by Danny Boyle. As much as I'm saying that a lot of Danny Boyle movies just don't click for me, I don't think he's ever had trouble encouraging a good performance out of an actor. So, fair credit where it's due.
And even Aaron Taylor-Johnson, I don't think I necessarily enjoy him that much in I don't think he's terrible, but I don't know, I don't usually tend not to. Maybe it's just the roles he picks, but I'm usually not crazy about him. But I thought he was good in this. I thought he fit the character pretty well.
It's funny because I knew him first from Kick-Ass, and I really like Kick-Ass. I don't think it's necessarily because of him. But I do really like Kick-Ass, and then I think of what I've seen him in recent years. I enjoyed Bullet Train, and he's a fun part of the ensemble in that. But yeah, I mean, it's not like I've seen Craven.
I have. It's not. Surprise! It's not worth watching.
You're not Craven, more Craven?
No, unfortunately. and I stick up for some of those Sony movies, but Craven wasn't dead. Yes,
I heard you talk for about 2.5 hours about how much you love Madame Web. You can go find that on Extra Reels or Patreon show over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV.
Yeah, if you like the absurdity of the last 2 minutes of this movie and want to see that stretch to whatever 100 minutes or however long Madame Web was, check that out.
I don't know if anything in that movie is as crazy as suddenly tracksuit cult. I don't know if anything's quite that crazy, but yeah, fair enough. So yeah, the first chunk of this movie, though, once we actually get to the main stuff, is the whole idea that Spike is going out on his first trip to the mainland, right? This is something that this village does. They have hunters that go out and scavenge for either, I assume, potentially animals for food, if not, certainly for supplies and whatnot. And they live on an island where on low tide, the water's low enough that you can walk across this kind of rocky path to get to the mainland. But when the water comes in, it's too rough and you won't be able to swim it even. Because they point that out, is that you can't even just swim across because the tide's too strong and you will drown. It will take you out to sea and you will die. So it's okay, I like that as a setup because it's a specific time thing. There's a window every day where you can travel to and from the island, but you can't the rest of the time. And they've got guard towers up to watch out for infected, so on, so on. But the whole thing with this first chunk is that he's going out on his first hunt with his dad, and everyone knows about it. Everyone, as they're walking through town, they're saying, hey, Spike, yeah, congratulations, Spike, we're so excited for you. Everyone knows. It's the town gossip. Everyone knows that he's going out for his first trip to the mainland. And we also introduce a bunch of other things here, of course. We get the first sort of signs of their relationship, and how he does seem to be a loving father who's encouraging him to be tough and whatnot, but not necessarily in a toxic way. The big thing, of course, is that the mum is sick. I think at least at the start I was thinking it seems to be some kind of weird early dementia, the way she's confused and she's yelling. And I thought that was interesting thematically because I was well, it's kind of funny later on, when they're on the mainland and Aaron Taylor Johnson's telling Spike, hey, they're not a person anymore, you can just kill them, don't feel bad about it, kill them. I was sort of thinking, I'm like, there's an interesting comparison to be made here for someone who has an illness where they're not like coherent anymore. Because one of the lines that he says is, his mind's gone, so he doesn't have a soul. And I'm like, yeah, but what about your wife? Like, at what point are you saying her mind is gone? And
That's a good point, yeah.
I thought there was an interesting comparison to be made there, that maybe it was going to tackle. I don't think it quite did. I feel like it kind of never went down that path, but I thought maybe it was trying to bring that into your heads at the very least. And at least comparing the idea of this virus to being something like a severe mental illness that's taking over someone's brain. But yeah, so there's a lot of she like becomes coherent for a minute and like yells at him for daring to take their son out. This is too dangerous, but then forgets that like completely immediately after, and but it does a lot of little things here where the son like gives her some of his bacon, which is a treat because they don't have a lot of pigs, so presumably it's something you only get once in a while. So it shows that he cares about his mom, that he's got a bit of a kind heart, and it's it does some character setup here in this opening kind of village section.
Yeah, I think that is something I've heard other people like complain about. The mom character, where it just feels like, like one of those like kind of movie sicknesses where it's just like kind of like convenient whenever like she has her like lapses or whatever, which I guess is like a fair complaint, but I think ultimately it ends up working, for the story that they're trying to tell.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something you could critique with any movie where like there's a random element of when someone is, in this case, when someone is coherent and can help, and when someone is completely useless because they're having an episode. I think inherently in writing, like the writers are picking when those moments are happening, and ultimately if it works or not is just kind of like, well, does it thematically make sense that she would be clear in this moment or not? I think getting down to debate, well, it's awfully convenient that she's like this at this moment and not like this at this moment. At that point, I'm like, yeah, but like, what are they supposed to do? Write it as if, well, we'll truly just roll a dice, and if she's, if the dice says that she shouldn't be coherent in this scene, well, we're going to have to write around it in some weird way to get them out of the situation. So, I don't know. It's kind of a weird critique to me, that specifically. I think my bigger problem with the whole mum plot is that after we do the whole opening segment where they go out to the mainland, and we'll talk about that, but the movie's plot becomes Spike wanting to take her to a doctor, right? Because not everyone seems to have given up on her. He thinks she's dying, and he intentionally sneaks out with her, which reminded me of the kid sneaking out in the last movie.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah. But they go to the mainland, and they're doing the whole journey, and we'll talk about all that properly in a bit, but I think there was an element to me where they did such a good job in that first like chunk on the mainland. He takes them out, and we get that really stylistic choice. It's in the trailer as well, that voice that's kind of rhythmically repeating the numbers and the stuff and saying various things. Yeah. And you get the little clips of the archive footage of wars and stuff as they're hunting the zombies. And then they get into some trouble where they're having to run away from zombies. They're hiding in an attic. It's a close call. Spike does good shooting the slow fat zombie that's crawling on the ground, but as soon as they're being chased by fast zombies, he struggles. So all of that stuff I thought was really well handled, and was like, okay, things are dangerous, right? They're very scary. They're dangerous. It's tense, especially since by the end of this whole segment, we outright introduce the idea of the alpha. The zombie with his big dick hanging out, who's clearly in charge and literally likes to rip heads out of their bodies with the spines dangling like the Predator, right? That's like his running thing throughout this movie. He's got the big caveman hair. That's a whole thing. So once the movie transitions to that, like the main plot after it, where it's the kid Spike taking out his mum to go find the doctor, from that point on, because they set up how dangerous everything was and how much Spike struggled in that first chunk, it did kind of feel like in that everything that came after is like, okay, now everything from this point on feels like plot armor. Because given how dangerous it felt in that first chunk, it feels like he should be barely surviving at best. Never mind actually try to take a mentally ill woman with him and somehow like scraping by. It just felt a little too easy sometimes, and it was like this is a case where the first chunk of the movie almost did a disservice to the rest of it, because instead of feeling tense from it, I was like, yeah, but they're going to be okay because they have to be. So I don't know, there's a bit of a disconnect there for me.
No, I mean, yeah, I can't really defend that. Like, because I definitely see where you're coming from, and I agree. It does feel like that first outing is much more dangerous, and then the second time he's going out with the mom, which should be much harder, considering, yeah, his dad's not there, and he has to take care of his mom who's not all there. It should be that much more difficult, but they seem to, I mean, obviously there's like hiccups and stuff, but they seem to do pretty well for getting to their destination and then getting back and stuff. So I think that's a fair criticism, but I don't know. Again, for me, I guess, I don't know, I was just so absorbed into it or whatever that it didn't really like bother me too much. I don't know. I was just kind of along for the ride at that point. I do want to go back to like you were saying with that first outing. Again, I just want to give like props to the movie, because I was very specifically like feeling the dread in this, and I don't know if like it's because I was into the characters or whatever, but like sometimes you're watching a horror movie and like the monster or whatever is sneaking up on someone, and you're kind of like, okay, like, oh cool, we're gonna see like a fun death or some gore or something, but like here like kind of in that first time where they have like the fat zombie crawling on the ground or whatever, and then you have like the one behind him that's kind of sneaking up to like Aaron Taylor Johnson, like part of me was like going like, oh no, like like, because I was kind of becoming convinced that the plot of the movie was going to be the dad gets infected, and then the journey is going to be him trying to find his way home. Like that's where I thought we were going, and like I was feeling like legitimate dread like every time they were put in danger, and I was like, oh no, is like something bad gonna happen to the dad? And like again, the kid's like a good likable character, so it's like, oh no, like I don't want to see him like on his own, like it's gonna be tough or whatever. So again, I was like really into it. I was feeling the the tension and stuff, and I liked that every time like the zombies and stuff were on screen. I thought they looked cool, and like the deaths were cool, like, and like that kind of like weird like bullet time thing I thought was effective. I don't know if I need to see it like that many times, but I thought it was like a cool little choice, and I like to like when they would do those kind of like infrared shots at night where you just see them like with their like kind of glowing eyes and stuff. Like I thought that was like a nice like kind of weird stylistic choice. So there's a lot of stuff that was working here.
Yeah, no, I mean that first chunk is the most sort of horror stuff of the movie. Really, is in that first chunk, and it establishes some of this lore that some of them are fat and just crawl around now, eating bugs and other things. So they're less dangerous unless they sneak up on you, because they're not running anymore. But there are still runners out there. There's still a lot of them as well. And obviously the movie does some other things later, like, one of the zombies is pregnant. So I'm like, oh, did the alpha actually get her pregnant? Are they actually, reproducing, naturally in that sense? Because it didn't seem like she was just bitten while pregnant. That doesn't seem right. Yeah. The implication seems to be that they have mated as zombies, and that she is going to give birth. So, I think all this stuff, and I like the before they go out the gate, the woman who's sort of in charge is like, hey, we usually wait until they're like 15 before we let them go out, and he's only 12. It's like, no, he's ready, like, trust us. And they go out, and I think all the build up is really good, and it was genuinely surprising when they get back to the village and they're fine. I was, what, that's actually the more surprising outcome here, is that it didn't just become about the kid on his own after the dad gets killed trying to find his way home or whatever. The fact that they get back is quite a unique choice, and I think one of the things that I really liked that the movie was starting to poke at this point in the movie is they're throwing them a party, right? They've set up like a party, like, hey, welcome back, Spike, you did your first day out and we're all proud of you because this is an important part of our society. And they're like lifting him up in a chair, the dad's like drinking and telling stories, and they're all like cheering, and But one of the things that stuck out to me is that the dad keeps saying, oh, he was firing off these arrows at all these infected, he never hesitated. And Spike's like, but I missed all those shots. And he's like, oh, he's being modest. And he just sort of drinks and they all cheer. And Spike's slowly sitting there thinking, I don't deserve this. I didn't actually do that well, but they're acting like this is like the best thing ever. And I really thought it was getting to an interesting thing where Spike was, part of his coming of age was kind of realizing kind of this weird like coping mechanism all the adults seem to have, which is they almost need this to be this success story just to feel good about themselves and that there's hope, because it would be very easy in this world to lose all that. So it kind of felt like, oh, it feels like we're kind of getting to like how he's going to start to disconnect from the village that he grew up in, and all these people around him, he's going to start to feel more alienated by them because he thinks they're being disingenuous about like what they're doing. And I thought there was like, I'm not even sure where I wanted it to go with that, but it kind of felt like, you know, between that and then him seeing his dad with this other woman, right? Which is like, oh, hey, mum's sick and he's off like drunkenly having sex with this other woman in town. And it felt like, okay, this is like going down an interesting path where it's less about, oh, the zombie survival and more about this kid's kind of like attitude towards the other human beings around him. Now that he's starting to understand how they function better, he's starting to like sort of see the hypocrisy and how they talk about certain things. He's starting to see, you know, his dad kind of cheat on the mom, and it's like, it's understandable in one respect because obviously like the relationship with the mom can't be what it was, but it also feels very cruel and certainly from the kid's eyes, it's like, hey, you're like betraying my mother here because she's sick, which makes you look very selfish. You know, like there's some interesting like things coming into the character stuff at this point, which obviously helps motivate his decision that he makes. That sets us into the next part of the movie.
No, I think it was a pretty like big swerve that you take with the character, because like up until that point I assumed that he was going to be the hero of the movie. You know, like he's really good at like hunting and, you know, survival, and he saved his son like so many times, you know, while they're out there. And then it just does this thing that I really didn't see coming, where you get back to the island and it's like, oh, he's just like lying and being like so braggadocious, and like, you know, like all of a sudden he kind of has like, you know, that masculine energy, and then just seeing him like go off with that other woman does, and maybe it's because like you're seeing it from, you know, the eyes of you know, the kid, but it does feel like such a betrayal, and you know, really just goes like from, oh, like this guy might be the hero of the movie to like, oh, like screw this guy, like I kind of hate him now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like this idea of like adults tend to complicate things and turn everything into shades of grey, where kids see the world in a bit more black and white. And I think to Spike, this is just bad. And it's like, why are we not trying to help mum? And obviously, the adults are all probably of the opinion, well, she can't really be helped. Whatever this is, it's clearly very serious, and there's no doctors. But when they were out in the mainland, they saw this fire in the distance, and the old guy in town talks to Spike, and Spike brings it up, and he's like, oh, I bet that's old Dr. So-and-so. What was his name? I can't remember. Dr. Kelson. I bet that was him. I can't believe he's still alive. And he's like, wait, there's a doctor on the mainland? Like, why can't we take her to see the doctor? And obviously when he brings it up to the dad's like, look, that doctor is crazy, right? We only ever encountered him once, and he tells this story about how the guy had like he was collecting all the dead bodies, and he had them all lined up in rows. And they didn't even talk to him. They just saw that and ran the other direction because he's clearly a psychopath. But he's like, no, we can't go talk to him. I think one of the things I like about, as much as I have some misgivings about the decision to make the rest of the movie be about taking the mum to go see the doctor, one of the things that I do like about it is the idea that I think we, the audience, know that it's hopeless. Like, I think we all know as an audience that her symptoms and what's going on can't just be helped by a doctor visit, right? This is not going to be some like quick thing where he's like, oh, rub some ointment on this or take 2 of these and call me in the morning. Not that he's got access to medicine anyway, but like there was no way, shape or hell that just visiting someone with medical expertise was going to like solve this. It might give him some answers, and that's what it does. It gives them a definitive, here, this is what's happening to her, but there's no hope. There was never any chance, because we're kind of like in line with the adults in the movie in a sense, because we can kind of clearly see, no, this isn't just like go and take some medicine and you'll be okay. This is something worse than that. So I like that element to it.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And yeah, like excuse me, like I haven't thought about this like clearly, but I'm kind of like putting it together now that like I guess that's like kind of like a theme of the movie where it could be yeah, just about like this older generation just looking at like the state of the world and just losing all hope. And I feel like that's something that you kind of see like a lot nowadays, where people are just like, well, the world's screwed, what are you gonna do? And then like, you have this like younger generation that is the one that's like, no, like, yeah, we gotta fight and eat, or even if it's hopeless, like, you gotta do something. Like I don't know, even if the world is burning, like you still have to like scream about it online and be like, no, like, this isn't right. Versus like, yeah, there's some people that are just like choosing to ignore it or something. And maybe, and I guess that's probably like why, he's having, this affair with this other woman or something. 'Cause it's just like, oh yeah, like, my wife's screwed, but it's, I should probably be by her side, but I kind of just don't even want to think about, the death and, the state of what's going on. And so I'm just going to act like, this isn't happening. Cause
yeah,
ultimately I think,
yeah, I was gonna say he's given up on her effectively and just moved on to someone else because it's just the only way he's able to cope with it, seemingly.
Yeah. Yeah, and ultimately that's what kind of like the last third of the movie ends up becoming about, is it's basically his son accepting, death, for the mom. And I do think there's like something interesting there too, like where it's like, okay, just because, we're in this like virus zombie world, though, that's not necessarily what might get you. Like, like life goes on, and there's still these kind of things that can get in a way, but then also like you can kind of decide, how you're gonna embrace that or whatever. So I don't know. Clearly, the movie like has like ideas and stuff that it's getting at, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of saying like, obviously, like Spike has to learn that people are going to be lost, that his mom's not going to be around. But at the same time, there is kind of like, no, his hope and like desire to actually do something about it is arguably more healthy in some respects than what a lot of the and obviously I think part of it as well, like, if the dad ever actually just explained this to him, like he avoids like actually just saying, no, like what she's got, it seems very serious. I don't know if he's necessarily clocked onto the idea that it might be cancer, because I didn't necessarily jump to cancer, but it does seem it ends up being a symptom of the cancer she has, that her mind's going in and out because it's spread to her brain, which, like, and it's something like where, when they get to the doctor and Ray Fiennes is playing that character where he's kind of like, I have no medical equipment to actually like confirm this, but based on my knowledge and like doing some quick checks, like I'm pretty confident this is what's going on. And there's no reason to doubt him. It seems like a pretty, reasonable diagnosis based on what we've seen. But I think that part of like the kid, like Spike's journey with his mom and the acceptance is interesting. And obviously I do like the stuff with the Swedish soldier that comes into it, because that's where we get to learn more about the rest of the world and see some comparisons with that in the UK, and like seeing those differences are pretty cool. But there's definitely like segments there though where it's kind of like, oh, where he's falling asleep and the slow zombies crawling towards him, and we find out in the morning that we get a quick flashback to how he survived that, which is that the mom kind of went violent and like beat the zombie to death and seemingly doesn't remember it. And it's like her instincts kicked in which she went full protecting mother mode or something. I don't know what to make of it other than that, but that's the stuff where I'm like, okay, this just kind of feels like you're trying to like give me some tension, and I respect it, but it does kind of feel like their journey seems quite easy compared to what the first chunk of the movie was teaching me about how savage the mainland was and how smart and violent this alpha zombie is. But hey, I do think it does, like, I love that it commits to what it's doing though. I will say that, for as much as I don't think I love the movie. Like, it doesn't quite click for me. I do like that it commits to things and doesn't like shy away from them. It says, no, this is what the movie's going to be, and it sticks to it. So I respect that, if nothing else.
Yeah, I always thought like, to me, I feel like kind of get the best of both worlds, because I thought the like zombie scenes were like really well done. I thought they looked cool. There's some fun deaths, like some good bits of gore. I do like that, like, yeah, it seems like mostly everyone is just like naked, like, which, yeah, I guess would make sense, because if they've been around for a while, that most of the clothes and stuff are probably like, rotted or fallen off or whatever.
Yeah.
But it does add, like, it does make them feel like a bit more like wild and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I thought there's like some pretty like all the scenes I felt like were pretty like stand out. I thought that scene, when they're sleeping and the zombies crawling towards them was good. I like the weird little detail where it like starts trying to eat his shoelace, like it thinks it's a worm or something. It's just like and again, it was another scene where I was like, oh, it's getting really close to him. Like, I legitimately don't know like where this is gonna go. And then like the scene at like with all the soldiers was like good, and then like I like the scene at the gas station, and then all the stuff on the train.
Well, I mean, we'll talk about these scenes. We're not just going to gloss over those, because
right, yeah.
Because the soldiers do come out of nowhere. Like, we just cut to these soldiers at one point, and you're like, what the hell's going on? And they're going into a tunnel, and like the Alpha and some of the zombies come and kills them, and there's only one survivor. So this is a very stylized sequence with lots of like, dark, visuals. I don't know if they have like night vision at one point in this scene. They might, but there's one survivor, and I think we get that scene before the scene where the kid's asleep, because I thought he was going to be the one that steps in at the last second and saves them. That ends up being the garage scene, though. When they run inside the garage to get away from zombies, and it's like filled with something like gas that's making them choke. And when the Swedish soldier pops up on the roof and says, "Hey, like, get down," and he fires some bullets, which makes a lot of it explode. They basically say it's like some of the fuels went bad. Like, over time, like, these fumes have came off the gasoline and done this.
Which is cool. Like, I don't know anything about the science of gasoline, so that's not something I would have said like, oh yes, I know gasoline does that. But that's like an interesting thing. Like, I haven't seen this before.
It sounds plausible enough. I at the very least liked the visual of it, because it had like a bit of a color to it. The gas that was sort of floating around, it had that kind of, I don't know, that oily kind of, like, if you put like something oily in water, it has that kind of look to it in the air. I don't know, I kind of like that.
No, it looks cool.
Yeah, and in this segment where they're traveling with the Swedish soldier, and it turns out that he was part of a patrol, because all the other countries in Europe all patrol the UK in the water, just to make sure that nothing's getting off the island. That's the plan. And their boat sank. A few of them survived on a raft, and they didn't want to come to the mainland UK, because basically if you end up in the mainland UK, that's you're gone. Like, the rest of the world will not come and try and save you. You're part of the quarantine now, deal with it. So he's obviously upset about that, but he's explaining a lot of this stuff, and there's a lot of, like, it feels weird to call it fish out of water jokes, but there's kind of some jokes made about how the kid doesn't understand a lot of the things that the guy's talking about. He doesn't know what a smartphone is, because smartphones didn't exist in 2002, so the UK's never had those. And he shows a picture of his girlfriend, and Spike looks at her and goes, "What's wrong with her face?" And he's like, "What are you talking about? She's beautiful." And the only thing he's got it to compare it to, he's like, "Well, it kind of looks like this one girl in the village whose lips get puffy when she gets stung by something because she's allergic." Like, that was that. He didn't understand the makeup or any of the facial treatments that were happening here. That was funny to me.
Yeah, no, I thought this was like a legitimately funny scene, especially because he's like so proud of it. Like, he wants to show, like, he almost wants him to be like horny first. He's like, "Hey, check this out." And he's just like, "Oh, what's that?" So I mean, that was like kind of the standout moment, but there's like lots of like little stuff that I thought, it's not like I'm rolling in the aisles laughing, but there's stuff that I thought was like, pretty humorous. Like, like he's talking about, like, his friend's a delivery driver, and it's like everything he says, like, you know what a delivery driver is? No, you don't. Like, you know what, like, Amazon is? No, okay. Like, well, you know what a driver is? Well, not really. Like, there's some good back and forth.
To be fair, the older characters would know what a lot of those things are, but he has grown up in this version of like post-apocalyptic UK, so he doesn't know any of this stuff because there's no such thing as drivers or the internet or anything like that.
Yeah, and there's like some funny stuff too. Like he's carrying the mom for a while, and then like she gets up and he's like she can walk. Like that was kind of funny. So I did like the introduction of this character. I didn't know if he was gonna make it to the end of the movie, but I was kind of surprised. Like
how quickly he goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they end up on a train. And they find the pregnant zombie. Now, we've seen the pregnant zombie stumbling around here or there, but like the soldier's going to shoot her, right? As you'd expect, because she's a zombie. But like the mum kind of steps in and is like, whoa, wait a minute. And basically, she seems to like give sympathy to this woman and says, no, like she's giving birth, and effectively like helps bring the baby out, right? And they cut the umbilical cord and all the rest of it, and the female zombie for a moment does kind of go docile and just kind of like, I won't say passes out, but kind of slumps over, and like the exhaustion's kind of like taking care of it. But notably, like a minute later, she does just start screaming again, like, oh, she's still a rage zombie. She's still going to try and kill you. So the soldier shoots her, and that makes sense. But the soldier then turns his gun and says, right, put the baby down, because I'm going to shoot it because it's a zombie baby. Like like no excuses. But the mom and the son are like, nah, it's not infected. We're looking at its eyes. Like the baby's fine. Somehow it's a regular human baby. You can't kill it. And he's demanding to kill it. And that's when obviously the alpha zombie, makes his presence felt and picks him up. This is like a proper monster movie moment actually, where he picks the soldier up via his head up through the roof of the train, and then when he jumps down in his full naked glory, he's holding the head with the spine dangling of the soldier. So I mean, I like the visual of that at the very least. I can't deny.
No, I thought it was pretty cool, and we've seen, I forget if it's that specific alpha before, but we've seen like in alpha, like ripping off the head of like an elk or deer or something.
Yeah, I think that was him. I think there's been the one alpha the whole time. Yeah, I think they've been building him up.
But then the one alpha that's like chasing them when they're going back to the village after like the first main outing, they kill him, right? Because they...
Was that the alpha? I wasn't sure if that was the alpha that was chasing them, or if he'd sent one of his zombie minions.
I just assume maybe it wasn't the alpha, but just like another jacked fast one. I guess could be.
There could be two alphas. You might be right, but the impression I had was that it was the same dude every time we saw him.
Could be, yeah. But either way, though, I mean, I always like the threat that the alpha, provides. I don't know. So like Resident Evil brain, that it's hard like not to compare like some stuff, but like when the soldiers like come, like that did remind me of like when you see like the mercenaries show up in Resident Evil, and then like the alpha kind of had like that energy of like a nemesis or something, where it's just like this unstoppable force that just like shows up from time to time, and like when he shows up that it's like, oh, like things are about to get like a lot more dangerous. So I thought that was all pretty cool. I'm not really sure how I feel about the baby. I guess it's an interesting idea. Not that it really matters. Like, I guess it's just being a little like pedantic, but it was hard not to, like, as a parent, like looking at that and being like, wow, this baby is being like so quiet. Like, there's no way that it like, I mean, obviously you want to protect it, but like the bigger danger to me would not be like if it had the rage virus, but it would just be like, oh, how it's going to constantly be crying and alerting, the others to like their location and stuff. Especially like a newborn, it's instantly going to, want milk or need to be changed, like, very often. So I don't know. That was like the one thing in the movie that I was kind of like, this is a little unbelievable that it's not just, going to be constantly crying and giving away where they are.
Yeah, nah. Also, one thing they bring up that I wouldn't even have thought about, I guess, is that like they need to get it milk at some point because water alone can't keep a baby alive. It would only last a few days, which I guess makes sense because they're not really chewing any food. So I guess the milk's the
right. Yeah,
got the actual other stuff in it that they need to survive. But yeah, and obviously it raises the question, like, is it a carrier like the characters in 2? Does the baby carry the virus even though it's acting human?
Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to go down that route, but because it seemed like a symbolic thing of like, no, like one life's going to end, like the mum's going to die, so this baby's like the new life that can live instead. And obviously the crying thing's not going to be a problem when it gets back to the village, because they're cut off from everything else, so they can raise a kid, properly. But I don't know, it's yeah, I don't know how I felt about it either. Like when I saw the pregnant zombie, I was kind of like, I guess we're doing this. I don't know how I feel about it yet. It kind of depends where we go. But it wasn't like instantly, oh, I'm excited by this concept. I was like, oh, this feels like... Because that's the thing, is that even all the interesting ideas in this, you kind of said it yourself at the start, it kind of reminds you a little bit of, oh, when there was like one smarter zombie in a Romero movie, like in Day of the Dead, or there was the one, like, it feels like it's still kind of spinning on some of the same ideas that we've seen done in zombie movies before, just in its own, 28 days later flavor. So... I think obviously after this they run down the train from the Alpha for a bit, and ultimately the doctor shows up and saves them because he's got like a trank to like make him docile for a bit, and with a blow dart. He calls him Samson because he's seen him around for a while, and he's like, yeah, I call him Samson because he hangs around, but we should probably get out of here. So he takes them back to his place, where it turns out the reason why he was collecting all the dead bodies is because he was making like a... well, I mean, obviously the next movie's called The Boneyard, which I'm assuming it's getting from this, but...
Oh, no, sorry. I think it's a Bone Temple.
Oh, sorry, The Bone Temple, not Boneyard.
Yes.
Fair enough. But my statement stands. I'm sure that the name is coming from this thing that this doctor's built, which is he's got like columns of bones stacked up, and he's got like a pyramid of skulls. And it's kind of psychotic seeming, even though he seems very calm and friendly. Which is obviously why people thought he was a psychopath, because he's doing all this with dead bodies. But it seems more like it's like a monument. It's like, hey, no, this is about celebrating, or maybe even celebrating is not the right word, but it's about remembering who has died. Both humans and infected, because they're all kind of the same, basically. And he's collected all these bones and he's built all these things. And he explains to Spike what memento mori means, and it's about, remembering that death is going to come no matter what. So it feeds into the themes that it's going for.
Yeah, that's like another thing where, like, again, everyone else is so repressed, like, with the idea of, death and wanting to talk about it and stuff, that, like, this guy seems crazy to him when really all he's doing is, just wants to, actually acknowledge that this is happening. It's like, yeah, it's kind of like the one character that's like, oh no, like we should honor these people and remember them, whereas everyone is kind of like just wants to ignore it and keep on going,
Yeah, obviously he's a bit kooky. Like, I mean, it takes a bit of a kookiness to get all this done, but he's been doing it for a long time. He has the other thing as well, that he's been rubbing his body in iodine because the rage virus doesn't like it. And I'm like, wait, so this is like a predator thing with the mud where they'll just stay away from you if you're covered in iodine? That seems like a very big cheat code that people could be using when they're out hunting in the mainland or something.
Absolutely. Like, I don't know how like rare it is to get, but I mean... I would instantly be like, oh, can I just have like 5 gallons of that? Because I'm just going to constantly be walking around in it.
Yeah. There's a bit of a stench to it, unfortunately. But other than that, it seems to be all right. But so, yeah, the movie kind of like all the threat of the zombies and whatnot kind of dies down for a while as we just do the, because at first he thinks they're there because of the baby. And obviously Spike explains between cuts that that's not the case. So he examines the mum and kind of explains what he's doing, and basically deduces, okay, like, I think she has cancer. I think it's, I don't know if it started in the brain first and spread to the body or the other way around, but she's not got much time left. And Spike, has to, like, like hear this, and he's crying, and he's like, wait, so you can't fix her? Please fix her. And he's like, I'm sorry, there's no way to fix her. I really thought at one point he was going to say something to the effect of, like, even back before this all happened, if I had a hospital with a staff, I couldn't have fixed her. Like, this was something that would have been happening regardless of the world that we're in.
Yeah.
So the whole thing becomes that, like, she clearly accepts that she wants to die peacefully before, like, this takes her, and they he tranks Spike so that he's not awake for it, or at the very least he's not, you know, moving around for it. And we actually see the process of him, like, stripping the skull of the flesh. You see him, like, washing off like the chunks of flesh after he's burned the body, and he ultimately brings back the skull and says, "Here, Spike, pick a special place," and hands him the skull of his dead mother. So we get this really emotional, oddly uplifting scene of Spike climbing he's got, like, branches coming out of this, like, skull pyramid, and he's climbing up of it so he can put it at the top, and the sun's rising. And there was part of me that was sort of thinking here, like, what is this movie? What has this become? Like, imagine watching 28 Days Later and imagining that in the sequel there's going to be this sequence. Now, obviously, one of the things that post-apocalyptic franchises tend to try and play with over time is the idea of the weird groups and characters that crop up in a post-apocalyptic society, right? Where they're unhinged and they're not, like, you know, controlled by the structure that once existed, and how crazy do some people get? And, you know, here we have this doctor who's doing all this with skulls, even though it's very well intentioned as far as we can tell. And then you've got, obviously, the Jimmy cult at the end of the movie. And that's the thing, they're all called Jimmy, so if there was any, like, doubt that they were taking inspiration from Jimmy Savile, like, you know, all that's completely gone, because it's clearly they are.
You know what's funny is I didn't really have that reaction, or I did have that reaction for the Jimmy scene, but yeah, like, for me,
I'd be worried if you didn't, Tim, to that scene.
because that is just so much of a, like, shift in tone and everything that we've seen so far. But yeah, for the, like, the stuff with the doctor and the bone temple and stuff, like, it strangely, like, didn't seem that weird to me, just because, I don't know, like, I felt like they did a good job. Like, if you just told me, like, before seeing the movie, like, if you just explained that one scene to me, I agree. Like, I would be like, wait, what are you talking about? But I don't know. I thought they did a good job of, like, leading you there. And, you know, like, once you kind of realize that the doctor, he's, I mean, again, maybe a little kooky, but, like, not, like, you know, psychotic or whatever. And once he kind of, like, explaining what he's doing, I was like, oh, this, like, all makes sense. So I don't know. Like, I like, weirdly was, kind of, like, all into it. Like, I didn't think it was, like, if anything, I thought it was, like, more touching than anything else. Like, it's kind of a weird, you know, meditation on,
to be fair,
like,
it kind of is touching. You know, I mean, I'm not arguing that. Like, the tone and the music and everything that it's doing kind of works, but there is also that moment of, like, yeah, but this is meant to be a 28 Days Later movie. Like, I think back to the first third of the movie, and I'm like, this is so wildly, like, moved on from that, which in some ways is a good thing, because it's surprising and it's doing different things. But, you know, sometimes, like a shift can really click for you as an audience member, and I love when it feels that way for me. And I don't like when it doesn't click, and I think there's parts of this that don't quite click to me. Maybe it'll work better on a rewatch. That said, though, I still think the ending's going to feel like it's just like a truck that's on fire just crashing into frame from off screen and taking us down a different path. But regardless, you know, this stuff is sweet enough, and it's this whole idea of, like, it's time to go home. But the end of the movie isn't the, you know, it's not that. I mean, well, actually, the Alpha shows up at one point, and they have to hide, and like, Spike saves the Doctor by using one of his darts that's got the tranquilizer in it to get rid of the Alpha. So he has a kind of nice little, like, oh, you saved me, you know, quick thinking, Spike, thank you. But ultimately, you know, they're going home to the village, but the Spike, instead of going home, he just leaves the baby at the gate and leaves a note for his dad. And so the only time we see the dad in the back half of the movie is when he's reading some of this note, and he goes running out after, as if he wants to run after his son, but the tide's already came up, so he runs into the water a bit, but he can't really go any further, so he just kind of screams into the water because he wants to go find him. And there's potential interesting growth there, like, you know, how he feels when he maybe does reunite with his son. Because I do suspect that maybe the son will be older by the time he sees him again, even if it's just the real-time aging of, like, making a movie over a few years. Like, the kid's probably going to be at least 16 by the time the third movie comes out, I would assume. So, yeah. Curious to see that.
Yeah, no, it is interesting because, like, the last scene you have with the dad is so, like, you know, it really makes you turn on him, but then, like, you know, you can see the legitimate, like, grief he has over, like, the loss of his son. Like, he, you know, he's not dead, but he's, like, out in the, you know, he doesn't know where he is. And, like, and then I did kind of feel for him again there, because it's like, oh, like, you know.
Yeah, we kind of glossed over the, like, that scene where, before Spike leaves, he confronts his dad about, like, oh, are you going to, like, you know, move in with that other woman kind of things. And the dad ends up slapping him, and Spike pulls his knife out and says, get out. Like, there's a whole moment here where the dad disarms him, but then he kind of hands him the knife back because obviously he doesn't want to actually, like, threaten his son. And he just kind of, like, he leaves, but he punches the wall on the way out. And it feels like a complete breakdown. Like, he's not understanding how to, like, talk to his son. And he's obviously upset that the relationship is deteriorated to this point where his son is actively threatening him with a knife and saying, stay away from us, because, like, you know, he feels like he's failed as a father at that point, I assume. But it's, you know, I think it gets into, again, this idea that a lot of what he was saying to him before, as well-intentioned as it might have been, tying into that whole part where the party's happening and Spike doesn't feel like it's earned, and he feels like it's all a bit of a charade. I think that there is a sort of an element of, like, a lot of the things that he kept saying to him being kind of these, like, you know, these platitudes of, like, oh, like, you know, good lad, yeah, do that, that's a good boy, you do these things here, and, like, oh, we're proud of you, you did this, all that. Like, he's saying all the things that I think he thinks he's supposed to say, because you're meant to reinforce things positively as a parent, and so on, only to find out that some of his decisions have turned his son so away from him that his son's willing to pull out a knife. As much as, like, he never really stood a chance of actually fighting his father off, he is still just 12 years old, after all. I don't know, I think, like, that's the last time we see him before we get that scene at the end where he, like, finds out about the letter and runs out after him and can't go any further because the water's up. It's an interesting, like two extremes to see, you know. It makes you think of any time in, like, a story where, like, oh, a parent and a kid who's older have had a fight, and the kid runs away from home, and the parent, like, has to sort of live with the fact that, oh, maybe I should have been more mature there because I'm supposed to be the parent, and, like, the kid maybe wouldn't have ran away if I had, like, said the right things, if I had kept my temper in check, if I had, you know, whatever it may be. I don't know. There is some interesting drama there to potentially explore, especially when they get reunited, as I assume at some point down the line.
For sure, yeah. And, you know, I'm curious, like, if we're gonna see more of, like, the baby. Like, I wonder if, you know, if you know, who's gonna, you know, take them in, and kind of like you said before, like, are they gonna be wary of it potentially being, like, a carrier, even if it's, you know, not showing signs or something?
Yeah, I was surprised that Spike said in his letter where the baby came from. I thought he was going to not. I thought he was going to leave out the part about who the mother was, just to, you know, so they don't even question it. They'll just take care of it because it's a baby and just leave it at that.
Yeah, and so, and it wasn't a big deal for me because it's like, you know, at some point the movie has to end, but kind of to your point before, where it felt like, oh, you know, the second outing isn't feeling as dangerous as, like, you know, the first time. Here, it's kind of funny that it's just like, we don't even see him, you know, make the journey back home with the baby, which you would assume would be pretty dangerous, you know, and I mean, maybe the assumption is that, you know, there was danger and he ran into things where he had to hide or whatever, but, you know, since we're not seeing it, it just feels like, oh, you got back there pretty easy.
Yeah, this is a frustrating one to talk about for me, because, like, I kind of get annoyed when people bring this point up in other movies, because if you're invested in, like, what the character's journey is, thematically, what you would say here is that, well, he has gained a new level of confidence, so we don't have to see the next part of it because he's now capable of doing it. It doesn't matter. But it's not like he got better skilled at fighting zombies in his journey. He was still kind of messing up and only just barely surviving with help coming out of nowhere to save him multiple times. So it does feel a little bit yeah, a bit weird that he seems to do this quite easily, and that he's going to stay in the mainland because he wants to go so far inland that he can't even see the water anymore. Like, he's excited about the prospect of that. So, honestly, I was very surprised at the end of this. Really felt like, oh, this is part one of a trilogy. This does not feel, and this is the complete. As much as I jokingly compared this to the Strangers trilogy, that's also out, like, you know, in the process of coming out just now. The end of Strangers Chapter 1 ended like just any other movie that of its kind, and just said to be continued with no reason for it. This movie doesn't literally say to be continued, but it ends on a to be continued. Like, the ending of this movie is basically like, hey, we have just started Spike's journey. So this trilogy is Spike's saga. This is 28 days later, or 28 years later, Spike's journey Chapter 1. That's what this was, and it ends that way, and it feels like there's more to get in the next two movies. For better or worse. I don't know if that's what I was expecting. Just because it's like, oh, they finally made this sequel that's 28 years later after all this time. Although part of me's thinking you couldn't have waited 4 more years, so it was actually 28 years later. Like, right, yeah. I know it's close. I know it's very close, but like, it could have been actually, if they had waited till 2030, it'd actually be 28 years later. But hey, whatever. I get it. It's close enough, I guess.
Yeah.
But I'm genuinely surprised that this was like when they announced there was going to be other ones, like sequels came after, I thought, oh, it's going to be like spin-offs after like Alex Garland and Danny Boyle have done their movie that they want to do. But this is chapter 1 of a story. This is they have mapped something out here, and they end this on the continued adventures of Spike will happen next year. And I did not see that coming because it feels way more franchisey than I think I ever expected from what they would do with a 28 Days Later sequel. So I'm not even saying it's good or bad. I think the last 2 minutes of this movie do make me wonder what the hell the next one's going to feel like. I don't know if Nia DaCosta is like how prepared is she to handle the Jimmy call. I don't know.
I mean, it's a big question mark. So like, I can't say that I'm not intrigued, but
yes,
we'll see. I really really like this movie. So if I knew it was Danny Boyle and Alex Garland doing the second one as well, I would be all on board. I'm just a little hesitant. Yeah, because I don't really have much against Nia DaCosta. Like I like the the last Candyman movie was okay.
It was okay. It was just okay. Yeah, if I'm honest.
Like if I like that last Candyman like a lot better, then maybe I'd be a bit more psyched. But at this point I'm more intrigued than I guess I'm like hyped for it. But I mean, who knows? If we get a trailer or something and it looks cool, I'll be on board. But I mean, at the very least, obviously we're going to check it out because of the show, but I'll be excited to check it out just to see where it goes, so.
Yeah, no, it's, I'm not sure. It's definitely an interesting thing, because I'm assuming, Nia DaCosta, I've never heard her speak. I'm assuming she's American.
I believe so, yeah.
I think she is. So I'm just interested in her, like, how she's going to tackle, all the Jimmy stuff, because this movie, for better or worse, is very British. There's all the accents,
it is,
and so there's definitely 1 or 2 moments where like there was a bit of mumbling where I couldn't even understand what they were saying, because it was like, I know it all sounds the same to you, Tim, but they're not speaking my accent. So when they started mumbling
right.
and getting emotional, I'm like, what was that? Something about his mom? What was that? I love me mom. I can't do the voices, but. Yeah, I don't know. It's definitely, like, actually that was one of the things we didn't say about the final scene, is that the Teletubbies music starts playing and it turns into a metal song. I don't know if the metal song was a cover of the Teletubbies song or if it was just kind of like a different song that it led into, but that's what's playing with all the parkour stuff's happening at the end. And again, the tone is so wildly different for those final couple of minutes. It's really weird, but I mean, I guess some people will enjoy the sudden turn it takes. Maybe in some ways I'm excited just because, well, maybe I can just enjoy the absurdity of the next one as opposed to like actually try to take it seriously as like a great zombie movie, because ultimately, like, I'm always going to like Dawn or Night or Trinity Busan or numerous other examples better than 28 Days Later, and that's okay. But I guess what's really interesting is, given that I think, or I don't think as highly of 28 Days Later as most people do, is do I think this is better or worse than that? And it's actually a really tough question. I think there's some things about this that I like more. I think 28 Days Later, though, did more, like, important things for why it, like, kind of got its, like, its reputation that it did. But I don't know. It's a tough question for me to answer. I think I like the character of Spike and, like, cared more about him emotionally than I did anyone in 28 Days Later. I'll say that probably, but it's tough to compare them. All right, Tim, what are you rating 28 Years Later?
I mean, I'm interested to see where our scores will lie, because again, not like you said you hated the movie, but it seems like there's definitely a gap between us. I'm gonna go fairly high. I was debating almost going as high as a 9. I really enjoyed this. A few things here and there, but like, that I can see like complaints about, but like ultimately, like even if there's like a little thing that I question or something, like it doesn't affect like the overall bigger story for me. But I do think I'm gonna hamper it just a bit and go with an 8.5. But I could see this maybe on a rewatch going that little bit extra above, because I am pretty excited to check it out again. But yeah, I mean, everything just really worked for me, and it's interesting because I do like 28 Days Later. I think I like it a little bit more than you, but it's not like that's a big seminal horror movie for me. Like, I liked it when it came out, and then it's one that's been a little harder to go back and check out again because of like the quality and stuff. But there's still things that I like and admire about it. But the sequel sucked when we redid it, so it's not like I'm like, oh yeah, this is a franchise that I really care about. But I don't know, watching this movie like did make me care about it. It's like, oh, like I just really like this world and the style that they brought to it and the look of it and the characters. Like, everything was just hitting for me, so I thought it was pretty great. Yeah, we'll see where it goes from there.
Yeah, hi. I'm not going as high as that. I'm positive that at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
It is a tough one to score because I do think there's some good qualities. I think that the performances are quite good. A shout out to Alfie Williams, who plays Spike. He's basically a newcomer. He's got like a couple of credits before this movie, but not a lot. He plays in an episode of his Dark Materials, and he played a young version of someone in a movie a couple of years ago. But this is, he's the star of this movie, and he's going to be the star of the sequel. And that's like half of his credits are just these two movies. So, and he's very good. I think they found someone who comes across very natural. He's pretty likable in the film. But yeah, like I don't know if I ever quite clicked with what it is. Like, there was definitely parts of me like in the middle where I was thinking, oh, I wonder how far along I am in it. Like, how much is left? Like, I was sort of my mind was wandering to those ideas a little bit. Ultimately, it just kind of comes down to it not really quite clicking with me, and I'm kind of separating the last couple of minutes as a separate thing, where that is just this batshit insane extra thing that feels weird, and I don't know. It almost feels like, how like I don't like in the first movie. We go into Act 3 in that film, and it changes to all the military stuff, and it goes down this pivot. It almost feels like this entire movie like ends with that pivot. Like, it's almost like the next movie is going to be the equivalent of that military section with this Jimmy cult. And I'm like, part of me is like terrified of that, but part of me is like, okay, maybe it'll just be silly and funny and I'll enjoy that for what it is or something. But
yeah, like, I'm not really sure how I would feel about the scene if it, like, instead of being 2 minutes or whatever, it ended up being like the last 30 or 40 minutes. Like, that would have maybe been like a much different thing. But yeah, like I can kind of handle the like wild absurdness of it as just like, since it's just like a very small like tacked on thing at the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'd be much different if like just the whole movie ended like that.
Yeah, I didn't even really mention Jodie Comer plays the mum, who I've seen her in a couple of things, I think, but like she's a name that's kind of popping up more and more recently. I feel like, but she was she's solid. Like I can say, I don't think any of the cast do a bad job. I think everyone delivers a nice natural role. The characters do feel fleshed out. There's just some, like, as a horror movie, I felt like some bite was lost once he was going back on his own with his mum, because it felt like, well, now he just has to have plot armor, and there's nothing about this that feels like he should really be able to survive. And it's not something that I normally get hung up on, and it doesn't bother me all the time. But the first chunk of the movie is so much about setting up how not ready he is to deal with this on his own, that it is kind of strange that like we immediately just have to buy that he's pulling it off in some way, or they're just getting lucky. At the very least, it feels like there should have been a lot more narrow misses where like it feels like, oh, they're so screwed, but then they just like escape or they just get lucky. But it feels like they have lots of like nice walks in a field and, you know, reminisce and or whatever. So let's have a picnic kind of thing. But 6.5. That's what I'm landing on. 6.5. I just don't feel that enthusiastic about it ultimately. And I've explained, I think, some of why I feel that way. I think some of it though is just down to, I don't know, the way Danny Boyle tells stories just doesn't click with me as much as I would like it to.
Yeah, not everything is for everybody, so
yeah.
You know, sometimes that's just how it rolls.
Yeah, but I like to be able to diagnose why and say this is what it did that I didn't like, or this is what it is about it that doesn't work for me. And it annoys me when I can't say exactly why I don't like something as much as I otherwise would. But fundamentally, like, I don't think it's a bad movie. I mean, we'll see what the ending leads to in the next one, but as it is, I do think it's got a lot of confident direction. Not every choice that's made in the direction necessarily will appeal to everyone, but there is, you know, like they were making choices. That them doing the Matrix style, we're going to have like 20 iPhones in a semicircle going around a zombie's head so we can do all these still frames. Like, that's an interesting idea. Like, they were going for something creative, and I can appreciate that. So, anyway, there you go. That's 28 years later, and we have maybe half a year before we're doing 28 years later, The Bone Temple. So, we'll see how that pans out. We'll see how the Jimmy call comes into it more properly. All right. That's the show, I guess. Any final musings you would like to pass on?
No. I'm
fair
so
enough.
tired. I just...
That's fair enough, Timmy. This has been Screams After Midnight. You can support the show and get a whole back catalogue of bonus episodes. We try and record a little bonus segment with each episode now as even more streams. For this one, we did like a little comparison between 1997 and 2002. I won't explain why we picked those years. It's explained in the bonus thing, but like that's available via Patreon or YouTube membership. Any support from any direction is greatly appreciated. If you want to do a one-time thing, a super thanks on YouTube is an option, of course, but support is how this keeps going, how I'm able to keep doing this. So thank you very much to everyone who does support us, and we'll be back with another Screams After Midnight next week, which should be all going to plan. Tim has got a couple of kids and he's moving house, so there's always a chance things will get shifted around, but the plan is that next week there'll be a regular episode about Megan 2.0. So, oops, she did it again. Because the trailers all have Oops, I Did It Again playing, so there we go. I'm making a fun little reference. We'll see Megan 2 next week. So join us for that, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next time. Keep watching scary movies, and goodbye.